Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. Slung Low is a theatre company founded in 2000 and currently based in the oldest social club in Britain, in Holbeck, Leeds, where it programmes work in its own performance spaces, but also creates large-scale works in non-theatre spaces, often involving large community casts. During the coronavirus lockdown, Slung Low is releasing a short film, The Good Book, written by James Phillips, a writer who has worked with the company on other projects before, with a cast of 3 professional actors alongside more than 100 people from Leeds, in the first piece of work to be produced by the new Leeds People's Theatre. It was filmed in January in Holbeck and Leeds, and will be made available to watch online from the 1st of May 2020. I spoke to Slung Low's artistic director Alan Lane on a line that unfortunately wasn't always as clear as I would have liked, and asked him to explain a bit about the project.
The Good Book is Leeds People's Theatre's first production, which is a short film written by James Phillips, 30-minute film about a civil war when kind of religious fundamentalists try to overthrow a government. We made the film with 100 members of Leeds People's Theatre, who are citizen performers, and 3 professional actors, Katie Eldred, Angus Imrie and Rihanna Duce.
Okay. And so why are you making a film rather than a stage show for this?
Well, lots of reasons. The first of which is we were over in Hull in 2017 for the UK City of Culture, and we got to make a piece of television and a short film then, and we were kind of bitten by the bug how there are certain things that are just a little bit more effective on film. Theatre is still our main art form, but we were like, oh wow, there's some stuff that really works here. And also that part of People's Theatre is about citizens making something that is of a really high quality and has a high impact. And to be in a play, in one of our big plays, you might have to give up 3 months, of evenings and weekends rehearsing. But to be in a film, it's only a couple of weekends. And actually, one of the things we've been exploring with this model of participation is that there are only certain types of people who can give up evenings and weekends to rehearse a play, and therefore we were quite excited about the idea of doing something that allowed people to volunteer for a much shorter period of time but have a really big impact. In the film, they're really important, and they feel such pride when they see that work done.
So Leeds People's Theatre, this is the first production under that banner. So what is this group that you've set up?
Well, we've been making People's Theatre for a few years now, which is about making really large-scale work that aims to have a national impact, that is written by brilliant writers like James Phillips, that have huge production values and huge physical impact, but also has at their heart a community company that are made up of citizen performers, people who are doing this and not having done it before. And they combine with professionals so that both groups of people end up making something they wouldn't be able to make on their own. Leeds People's Theatre is actually just our attempt to do all of that, which we've been doing all over the country, but just in Leeds, where although it's our base, never really been able to do one of these big shows. So it's our commitment to being in the city, to having a long-term relationship with hundreds of people who want to make performance. And it's their first project, so we're really excited.
But in a sense, it's part of a trilogy. There are 3 productions from James Phillips, aren't there? That this is the third one of those, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working with James. He creates this dystopic near future world, and The Good Book is the sister piece to Camelot that we made in Sheffield with the Crucible. That's 2, maybe a bit longer ago now, maybe 3 years ago, and it was really popular. Had a kind of riot in the middle of it, and it was good fun. We had a lot of fun doing that with Daniel Evans over at the Crucible. So The Good Book is actually what happens in Leeds whilst Camelot is in Sheffield. So it was really nice to return to that story and that world.
Right, so you're covering a fair amount of Yorkshire in the whole story.
Yeah, well, we were over in Hull, for another part of that world. It's a bit like a theatrical Avengers. We've got all these different stories going on all over the place, and we're very much we see ourselves as an M62 theatre company. We get about as much as we can.
The community involvement is something that's an important part of this. So how does that work with the professional actors as well? Do they all rehearse together?
Yeah, as much as possible. I mean, we're lucky. We often break down into evenings and daytime rehearsals. So we rehearse things in the daytime that only the professionals are needed for, because obviously everyone's at work. And then in the evening, that allows us to be much more efficient with our time. The thing we found, and it was definitely true of these 3 brilliant performers who are in the film, is that the actors take on a leadership role. There's a kind of, you've got a group of, say, you're in a bar scene with 20 people and you've been acting for a few years and you've been to drama school, then as the shoot goes on, there's an opportunity to share some of that skills and the actors who really enjoy working with us, these three guys who are in this film, and the likes of Oliver Fenton, who's been in a lot of our work, and Lisa Howard, and they really embrace that. And I think actors, especially actors who are just really full of skill and craft, love the opportunity to work with people who are kind of really excited to take those first steps of learning, if that makes sense. And so we find that really helps. The thing we're really aiming here is that both groups of people end up making something they couldn't have made on their own. Without the professionals, this isn't the same. But equally, without the citizen performers, it isn't the same. And you end up with something that requires the involvement of both groups. And I think you end up with a much richer product as a result of that.
It must be quite a challenge as a director, or for the whole production team, to coordinate so many people coming from so many different backgrounds with different schedules. It's got to be harder work than doing a regular production, surely.
Yeah, the industry is kind of well overdue a really grown up conversation about participation and its relationship. There is this idea that people use volunteers because it's cheaper than hiring professionals. That is absolute madness. It just isn't. It takes. There is I had two brilliant associate directors on this, Sally Cox and James Blake, whose job it was to make sure that everyone was looked after when the attention of the other team had to be somewhere else. And they did it brilliantly. But the idea that this doesn't take up more energy and more time. It's brilliant. The film director we work with, Brett Chapman, says something really great in one of the videos he made, which is these are not extras. They're not supernumeraries. They are an important part of the correct process. And the whole process is set up to make sure that is a truth. And we would often say Brett's job is to look after the film, and my job is to make sure that company of performers have the most extraordinary experience they can have. Because the art has to be impressive and impactful and interesting, but equally the experience for the participants has to be as high. And those two things have to happen at once.
What's the philosophy of Slung Low as a theatre company? Can you make a lot of large-scale work? It's not by any means a conventional theatre company, is it?
No, at its heart, we're attempting to be useful and kind at all times, and we have the great privilege of public funding, and we believe that public funding should be to do things that the market or commercial theatre can't do. And some of that is to do with scale, and some of that is to do with location, and some of that is to do with generosity. And we obviously run the oldest working men's club in Britain as a pay-what-you-decide venue, which is both an unbelievable privilege and a money sink. It requires a lot of funding to do that. I think that at its core, what we're after is we believe that everybody has the right to the most extraordinary cultural life, and there is no reason why a nation like Britain can't give that to everybody. And the fact that we don't is actually because it's a political decision. It's because the political system we work in, the economic system we work in, has decided that some people, especially the young people where we are in South Leeds and other places like that, are just not important. And therefore, every decision we make is about fighting and countering that with as much ferocity as possible. I think the people of Holbeck and Beeston deserve to have exactly the same cultural opportunities as if they live next door to the Barbican or the RSC or were wealthy or any of the other privileges that allow us to access culture. And everything we do, including this film, including running the club and anything else, is to do with that.
You mentioned the Holbeck. This is the venue that you took over, was it just over a year ago, was it?
18 months now, yeah, we've been there a bit.
Yeah, and this was an old working men's club. Well, it's still an old working men's club, which you sink a lot of funding into, but it's used for theatre, for all sorts of community activities, isn't it? So it's a huge amount of administration for you to keep that going, isn't it?
Yeah, it is still a working men's club owned by the members, and it still operates. It still, opens at 11 o'clock on a Sunday to sell pints a mile. But it is also the home of our base. It is the home of our cabarets. It's the home of a regular performance. We have a new show every Sunday at 5. The cultural community college is there. People learn how to do bread baking, and it's a space where every part of our community has their high days and holidays. People get married there. People have christenings there. We have Ghanaian ceremonies and majorette awards. So, it's that carpet has more variety of food thrown on it than anywhere. It's extraordinarily mess that we can all make. And it's amazing. It's a huge undertaking in many ways. Only a fool would run a pub nowadays.
Yeah.
it is the quickest way to lose money. I mean, it is just nothing makes sense with the finances of running a pub in a community like us. But we're not a business. We've never been a business. We are publicly funded, and we are artists. And so our job is to. I had an amazing quote this morning at a meeting, a Navajo quote, which is the artist's job is to provide that which life does not. And I thought, do you know what, that'll do.
Yeah.
That'll do. I think that's and as a result, obviously Corona's hit, and we were asked 3 or 4 weeks ago by the council to take over as the ward lead on social care referrals, and that is as a direct result of us taking on the Holbeck, of taking on that community and providing a different type of care for them. So when this crisis came along, when people are looking up and saying, who can do this in this area, they can go, oh, those guys can. And so, of course, it's changed us, but it's made us much better, much more relevant, much kinder, much more useful than we were before.
Yeah. The fact that you bring so many different types of people with different backgrounds and different reasons for coming there, in a sense, it's a marketer's dream, because I've read what you wrote about kids who weren't being fed, who weren't getting breakfast, coming in there, and then you get them in there, and then you're showing them theatre, and you're getting the parents then. Yeah,
I think, again, it drives, I know it makes me sound like a simpleton, but it drives back to the idea of being useful. We are a space, we've got a 250, 300-seater cabaret space upstairs, and people, it's the only space in our area that you could have, say, a party for your grandparents' wedding anniversary or a christening and we say yes to all of them. We say yes to absolutely everybody. If you want that space, you can have it. And because we pay what you decide, basically the only thing that that space has to be free. If it's free, it's yours. And because we say yes to everything, it means that it doesn't mean you're more likely to go and see Chris Thorpe's one-man touring show, but it does mean that you're more likely to listen to us tell you what's on this week. If you've gone and you've celebrated your nana's birthday there, then you're much more likely to feel like you might be able to come and see something than if we were only interested in the things we're interested in. If you want to have a Ghanaian wedding at our club, we will happily welcome you. And as a result, you're much more inclined to go, oh, go on then, what have you got this weekend? What is that? What is that? Tell me that. And that's, so we're not actually marketing to people ever. We're just telling them what we've got on, and that's a different relationship.
Yeah. And they're interested in the things that they wouldn't normally come to as well, aren't they?
Oh, the crossover's huge. I mean, we do cabarets, big sort of sprawling cabarets with meals in, and I've got everyone from Terry, the president of the club, who sits there in his flat cap and is, I want Britain back, I want my country back, Tag, and Darren Henley, Chief Executive of the Arts Council, and every bugger in between. Those big nights we have, we work incredibly hard to get the best artists we can, and also to make sure there is something for everyone to love. And so far, touch wood, we're able to do that.
The pay what you decide, a lot of theatres dabble with that as something that they do occasionally, but that's a company policy. Is that a viable? I mean, I know you get funded as well, but is it a viable business strategy for you?
Well, I mean, we're in many senses, we're the least successful business people in the country. But I would argue that, we never set out to be. We were given subsidy of £185,000 a year by the Arts Council, and we spend £185,000 a year in making art. I think that what we're definitely seeing at the minute, and obviously it's because of coronavirus, but not only because of coronavirus, is there are a lot of major organisations out there who are given millions of pounds of subsidy, and they don't use that to make £1 million worth of art. They use that to experiment in the commercial market to see if they can raise more money so they can make more art. And what's happened now that the arse has fallen out of theatre tickets is the theatres that we thought were the safest are now the ones that are in most need of bailing out. Now, that's not their fault. Coronavirus came along. But before coronavirus came along, it was still the case that we had chief executives and artistic directors of major buildings banking the house on their latest musical shifting enough tickets. And I think that's a problem because, yes, we don't make anywhere near the box office on our pay what you decide than if we were charging 15, 20 quid. But we do have a completely different type of audience as a result of that. And if we want arts funding organisations to be relevant as well as expert, they're going to have to get the whole variety of their community through the door. And I think an awful lot of our communities are sick and tired of being told they can go and see a show at their local theatre on a Tuesday when there's a cheap ticket, but not on a Saturday when they want to go to the theatre because they have been priced out of the market. And I think that obviously COVID-19's come along, and therefore we're talking about other things. But the thing we were just starting to talk about, and the thing I'm certain we're going to go back to, is if these are public buildings, then they need to be accessible to all members of the public, and not just those that can afford it. And for too long, the finances of the big theatres just doesn't make any sense in those terms. In
January, you wrote a very long blog post about...
like a bloody novel, wasn't it?
I've read it. It's all about, it's a year since you moved into the Holbeck and all the things that you've done, and rethinking how you're going to proceed with that in the future. Now, of course, COVID-19 has come since then. So what's your position with that now?
Well, I mean, on the one hand, we've obviously completely, in the space of 4 weeks, I joke and say I used to run a theatre company. 4 weeks later, I run a social care referral unit, which is basically a really, really well-organised food bank.
Yeah.
And that's true. And at the same time, it's also true that what we're doing is just an extension and an evolution of what we were doing before. We're attentive to our community. We've still got creative projects. We do a live Facebook game show, interactive game show with our community every 2 weeks on a Sunday, because bingo and raffles and all that good stuff was what the club was all about, and putting that on the internet is really proving to be popular with our community. We're doing LS11 Art Gallery. So everyone in our community got a flyer saying, if you draw a painting, we'll print it on waterproof board and put it on the lamppost. So the whole of our area becomes an art gallery. And the food bank is just another step in that. So I think what it's definitely allowing us to do is demonstrate our commitment to the area, almost like on steroids. So we were really committed, and we sunk lots of money and lots of energy into it, and people were starting to be won over by the fact that we'd been there for a year, and we had paid off all the debts, and we'd done all the things we said we were going to do. All of a sudden now we're dropping food off at people's doors, and it's very hard for them to see us as outsiders or invaders or anything like that, because we stayed. We didn't close and go home on holiday for 3 months, which I think would have probably been a reasonable response, or at least a response that would have been justifiable. We didn't. We closed the club, and then we sent a letter to everyone, all our neighbours, saying, we're still here, let us know what you need. And now we have an official description of that commitment, but we were going to do it anyway, even if they hadn't asked us. And so I hope when this is over, our community will trust us even more than they did beforehand. But regardless of whether they do or not, because they're a suspicious bunch of buggers, we will still be there, and we will, when this is over, and we've provided their food and we've fetched their prescriptions, and we've looked after them, we will then be ready to make them laugh and to welcome them to other cultural events and challenging theatre and all that good stuff.
Yeah, sell them more pints of mild.
Yeah.
One thing I did pick out, one little phrase I picked out, which I thought was really interesting, right towards the end of that big blog post, was inspiration of Joan Littlewood. And when I read that, I thought, yeah, it does make sense, all the things that you'd said up to there, being inspired by Joan Littlewood. I'd like you to talk about that, about what's inspired you about Joan. I think,
we've often said, I think we're just a 1960s theatre company born 50 years too late. I think, we're little more than, certainly the work we make is just extensions of the mystery plays with a bit more fire, I think. And Joan is an inspiration to us in terms of someone who didn't feel like they belonged, who was chippy about the theatre industry, who understood that the first thing you've got to do is entertain. It's no point being a smart ass, and knew that in really unlikely places, glorious things could be grown. And so, absolutely, she's an inspiration, and then I would say John McGrath alongside that as well. I think we're very much models on Joan Littlewood and John McGrath, and have sort of have been quite open about that for years. Really, we not so much the second half of Joan's career.
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to be making West End shows and living with counts anytime soon. But certainly, I think what she did with the travelling players and in Stratford, I think clearly whenever in doubt, we say, what would Joan do?
Yeah.
And massive fan of what Stella Duffy and the Fun Palace is doing, and I feel like at the club what we've made, when the club was opened in 1877, there was no bar, so this was just a place. It was a lecture hall and a games room. You could go and play like billiards, and you could go to lectures, talks from people. And we always talk about, because when people say, oh, you've taken over the club and you're doing something, oh, God, it's something new. I'm like, no, we're not. We're not doing anything new. We've just gone back to originally what it was. For 40 years, there's no pub there. And the pub is actually the least interesting thing to me. I mean, it's important because the members think it's important. I don't care. I don't drink. But the rest of it, the lecture hall, the performances, the place where people go to be entertained and educated, that, I think, is Fun Palaces. That is through and through. We are a fun palace, or we aspire to be a fun palace. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think Joan Littlewood is clearly a huge inspiration for us. And John McGrath and his Big Night Out. And, you know, we make political theatre, but we make political theatre that's always on fire and sometimes on water. So we have absolutely no problem at all in understanding our first responsibility is to entertain.
Yeah, which a lot of people often forget that Brecht often said. Yeah.
I mean, all those lads and lasses, they all got it. They were like, listen, at that point, if it's a boring speech, it's a boring speech.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had in the last 2 years, we've made a lot of cabarets. We've had a lot of fun with that form. And the cabaret's incredibly political and incredibly sort of risque and dangerous and biting and all those other words, but they're also bloody funny. And they're, you know, and the music's good, and that's the important thing.
So the Good Book, it's available online from Friday the 1st of May to stream.
Yeah.
I know things are fairly uncertain at the moment, but apart from your deliveries that you're doing at the moment, do you have any other solid or solid-ish plans that you can talk about?
Well, we really want to. I mean, we've been very clear that Leeds People Theatre is our sort of contribution to Leeds 2023, and we want to be working towards a really big, new citizen-led musical then, and we'll continue to make people's theatre wherever we can be commissioned. Our next one will be for the National Theatre of Scotland. We've got a show up there in about 18 months, and then so always bouncing between our commitments to Holbeck and our commitments to making the work we make nationally that sort of have an impact well beyond what we could achieve at the club, and trying to balance those two things best we can, I think.
That was Alan Lane talking about Slung Low and Leeds People's Theatre's The Good Book, which will be available to watch online from the 1st of May 2020. For more information, see www.slunglow.org. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.